Outrage in Israel after a British court issues an arrest warrant for the former Israeli foreign minister. Does this signal greater accountability for politicians and military leaders? Or is the legal system open to abuse? And what does it mean for ties between Israel and Britain? This is Inside Story. Hello there, thanks for joining us. I'm Shuli Ghosh. Britain has pledged to change a legal power which has left Foreign Office officials with red faces. The principle of universal jurisdiction says that some crimes are so serious they can be tried anywhere. But after an arrest warrant was issued for former Israeli Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni, the British government is now urgently reviewing the law. The warrant had been granted by a London court at the request of Palestinian campaigners who wanted her tried over alleged war crimes in Gaza. Livni has since cancelled her trip to Britain and the warrant has been revoked, but it has caused outrage in Israel. Livni herself says the legal system has been abused by the Palestinian plaintiffs and that she stood by her decisions during the Gaza war.
When the state of Israel has to do the right thing, it has to be done. Condemnation or no condemnation. Arrest warrants or no arrest warrants. This is the role of a leadership. And as far as I'm concerned, I would repeat each and every decision.
Let me introduce our guests to you. In Jerusalem, Shimon Shetrit. He's a professor of law at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. In Paris, human rights lawyer Saad Jabbar. And in London, Sonia Skeets, Associate Fellow of International Law at Chatham House. Welcome to all three of my guests. Let's start by talking about this concept of universal jurisdiction. Sonia, this means that some crimes are so serious they can be tried wherever they took place. But is it a well-defined law?
The concept itself has been around for many, many centuries. What is not entirely clear still is the range of crimes to which it attaches. Certainly there seems to be a consensus that it bites in relation to crimes against humanity, war crimes, genocide, torture. There is also a lack of clarity, in relation to how this particular area of law interfaces with the law on state immunity. And this is one of the issues that I think has really come to the fore in the latest controversy.
Yeah, because there was a question mark over whether Tzipi Livni, and she's now, of course, the opposition leader rather than a minister, whether she was actually subject to this law.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's fairly well settled now that serving heads of state and government and foreign secretaries, etc., are able to repel attempts to arrest them on the basis of immunity that they have. But when it comes to people who are no longer serving in those capacities, then a lot of issues remain. And this is exactly the kind of area that I imagine she would have been looking to exploit had the arrest warrant been effective.
Shimon, this, of course, hasn't gone down very well in Israel at all. As a professor of law, was this arrest warrant a legal move? A correct legal move, I should say?
In my opinion, I didn't see the evidence and I didn't see the actual warrant, because it's not normally a statement that is given with reasons. Normally, an arrest warrant is granted based on a certain request. You see, the issue of using or misusing universal jurisdiction in the context of the exercise of self-defense by Israel vis-à-vis terrorist attacks by missiles and rockets directed at Israeli civilian population with the intention of killing civilians, because it was the rockets are not accurate at all, and it always directed at cities and centers.
You're talking like a defense lawyer now, Shimon. You're talking like a defense lawyer. Are these not issues that could be debated in a court of law?
No, I'm talking about the objective analysis of the situation, that when you talk about war crimes, it's a very, very wide version. It is a range of activities. We are talking now about an operation with surgical operation directed against a terrorist organization that has been using civilian locations for its operation. And when we, the Israeli Defense Forces, I have to say we because I am an Israeli, when the Israeli Defense Forces targeted a certain area, they give warning to all the unarmed and uninvolved by sending hundreds of thousands of leaflets, SMS, and telephone calls to the targeted area to warn them to leave. Now, if they didn't leave and they were harmed because of either mistakes or of the fire getting to the wrong place.
Okay, but you're actually talking about you're actually talking about the charges that are being levelled at Israeli leadership. Saad, Shimon is there. Shimon is saying.
This is exactly.
Well, let me put this to Saad. Shimon is saying that there's no case to answer. This arrest warrant should not have been issued. Given that the warrant was first issued and then revoked because Tzipi Livni didn't set foot in Britain, was there any merit in taking this action? Hasn't it just resulted in embarrassment and anger?
Well, embarrassment and anger, I think, of whom? International law and has developed thanks to many Jewish scholars. And I mean here international lawyers who are Jewish, and the people who are against what happened to the Jews during the Second World War. And the Jewish mind was behind developing fundamental principles in international law against genocide, against war criminals, against many other infringements against humanity. Therefore, humanity is indebted to that Jewish mind. Now, what the Israelis are doing, they are saying we should really return to the pre-Nazi era, whereby if someone committed war crimes or crimes against humanity or other crimes which are serious, these crimes are universal. It doesn't matter who committed them and against whom they were committed. They are international. If anyone has a red face, it is the British, for the simple reason that they have started a few months ago to prepare for a law, to amend the law, so that the Israeli officials and others who might be accused of committing crimes under international law or British law could escape punishment. So we are talking about the British government now doing exactly what the Belgians. The Belgians were subjected, and Professor Shimon Street could confirm that because he was on a program with me on another occasion where he said we put pressure on Belgium and other countries, and therefore they changed their law in order not to subject the Israelis to any sort of appearing before the courts or national courts. I think this is really a total reversal which would show or would really give a good gift to Osama bin Laden and those extremists who would say, look, when it comes to Arabs and Muslims, they can be victims, no one defends them, there is no law, no international law, no British law which protects them. When it comes to others, they are protected.
Okay.
So there is that support for double standard now, and it's total reversal. It's an act against real humanity and against the universality of mankind and the indivisibility of mankind and human rights.
Well, let's have a look at the reaction in Israel to this. Obviously, lots of anger. This is what the Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister Danny Ayalon had to say.
It just shows the ridiculous situation where we find ourselves, where there is an abuse of the legal system against democracies who defend themselves from terrorism. There is a major loophole, I understand, in the British judicial system, and we were promised that the British would close that loophole.
And in a statement, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, we will not accept a situation in which Ehud Olmert, Ehud Barak and Tzipi Livni will be summoned to the defendant's chair. We completely reject this absurdity taking place in Britain. Sonia, the kind of accusations that are being levelled here, it's absurd, it's ridiculous, there are loopholes. I mean, is there a fear that this concept of universal jurisdiction could be used to harass officials who people say have done wrong?
I mean, Absolutely, and you'll find this kind of refrain not just from Israeli leaders, but leaders all over the world who are worried about being held to account in this manner for grave international crimes. I mean, whether there's been an abuse, I mean, so there's a lot of political rhetoric here which gets trotted out every time somebody in a position of political power or top military brass
and that's the problem, isn't it? It always becomes political. I mean, we've seen the cases of General Pinochet where it became a political embarrassment. And is that the problem? Does this sort of set up the state against the justice system?
I mean, I definitely think this is the heart of the matter, that we're seeing here international law rubbing up in a very, very uncomfortable way against international relations. Hence, the very, very strong reaction we've seen here in London from the Foreign Secretary, David Miliband, who is very, very concerned to try and minimise any kind of diplomatic fallout in terms of Israeli-UK relations.
OK, well, let's have a look at what David Miliband said. This is the British Foreign Minister, and he was at pains to emphasise the strong ties between Israel and the UK. And he said, Israel is a strategic partner and close friend of the UK. The government is looking urgently at ways in which the UK system might be changed in order to avoid this sort of situation arising again. Just quickly, Sonia, it seems strange that the British government isn't defending its justice system. It seems to be caving in to pressure from the Israelis.
Yeah, I mean, what we're really talking about here, I think, is the independence of the judiciary, which is causing some discomfort for the UK government right now. What Miliband is unhappy about was the inability for any kind of political decision to be taken to, in a way, act as a form of oversight over decisions that the magistrates were taking, in this case, to issue an arrest warrant.
Shimon, what do you think about this? Saad has said that there are double standards at play here. This should be about protecting human rights. And hasn't Israel itself used the principle of universal jurisdiction? Didn't Israel use it when it was trying Adolf Eichmann over the Holocaust back in 1961?
Yeah, of course, we accept the universal jurisdiction when it is used without political bias. The double standard is not what my colleague Jaber Saad says. The double standard is the double standard used against Israel. Can anyone find one example in the world that the military operation was conducted by first warning all the civilians by SMS and telephones, and if they are harmed, after they are harmed, they come after those who warned them and they were harmed afterwards? I have not seen any event in any operation in recent times, not the British forces, not the Americans, not the German, not the French, in any of the operations that took place in recent times, that they warned. So the double standard is being used against Israel.
What do you say to that, Saad? Double standards used against Israel?
This is exactly what happened, and therefore we accept universal jurisdiction.
Shimon, let Saad answer your accusation. Saad?
Yeah, Shimon Street is trying to defend the indefensible. He's trying to put a good face to a very ugly act which has taken place. The attacks which took place in Gaza, they took place against schools which belong to the United Nations, well marked, and the repairs were given to to the Israeli forces, and the Israeli forces are well equipped with technology. They took place against mosques, they took place against other, including the American school, by the way, and other civilian positions. When you talk about a reversal, double standard,
that were used by Hamas. They were used by Hamas.
No. Golden Star report.
As human shield.
Asserted. No.
Well, Goldstone has been already called Mohammed Goldstone, so now we know where he stands. No, he's more Jewish than you are, maybe, because he upheld the Jewish tradition of those. Goldstone has upheld the Jewish tradition of fighting against dictators like they fought. Can I finish? Because I allowed you to finish. If you want to speak, I'll finish. I'll speak until you cannot speak as well. Don't be dictatorial. You are talking about democracy. Goldstone report cited and investigated, and he showed that crimes against humanity or war crimes took place, and those who committed them are the Israelis, and he mentioned others.
Why are you frightened of the British justice, which you borrowed a lot from in your judicial system? Seymour Rosenthal, God bless his soul, pursued those who have killed the Israelis because they were Israelis or Jews for no reason. Now you are killing Palestinians because they are Palestinians, because you perceive them as the enemy. As long as they exist, they are a threat to you. Self-defense, you are misusing self-defense.
Because Hitler they sent the rockets and missiles to our cities.
Gentlemen, let's just move the discussion on. Let me talk about previous cases where this principle has been used, because this is the first time a UK court has issued a warrant for a former Israeli minister, but there have been other examples. In July 2001, activists in Belgium sought to try the then Prime Minister Ariel Sharon for alleged war crimes in Lebanon. The International Court of Justice ruled that serving ministers are immune from prosecution. In September this year, an arrest warrant was sought for Defence Minister Ehud Barak, but he argued successfully that as a member of government, he had diplomatic immunity. In October, former military chief Moshe Yalon cancelled a trip to London for fear of arrest over alleged war crimes. And just last month, a Spanish court issued arrest warrants for 6 current and former politicians, including Trade Minister Benjamin Ben-Aliza. These were eventually overturned. Saad, none of those examples have actually resulted in Israeli officials or former Israeli leaders appearing on the dock. Do you think they're having much impact? You know very well that the crimes against humanity, genocide crimes and so on, they don't fall because of the passing of time. There is no time limitation on them. And remember the center of Seymour Rosenthal, who have been pursuing those who committed Nazi crimes. The Nazi crimes were crimes against humanity, war crimes and genocide. And not because the fundamental principles and the laws which developed were not only made to serve the Jews who were killed. But what you've got now is a situation where the British government, let me just ask this question. The British government has reacted to all this by saying what they want to do is review the law and change the law. What do you make of that? They have said that a few months ago. Jack Straw leaked it recently, or a few months ago, and The Guardian reported this. He said, we want to change the law so we will not bring people to justice, those who have been accused of those international crimes, because we can't cope. So the only people we could try here are those who are permanent resident in the UK, or they are British nationals. Implicitly, we are going to exclude the Israelis, because they know many Arabs, Muslims and human rights lawyers and fair-minded people from Britain and others were preparing cases and potentially preparing cases against the Israelis and other dictatorial regimes who are friends of the United Kingdom. The Blair government, the Labour government, should be ashamed of themselves in terms of this transgression against human rights, basic human rights. Few days ago, the British courts have forced the British government to disclose documents, secret documents about their involvement in torture. And this government didn't like that. They were critical of the judiciary because they know the judiciary are independent. So the British government have added insult to injury. Once they were involved in attacking Iraq, now they are on the side of Israel in not caring about the Palestinians when they are killed, not caring about the Arabs when their human rights were violated. The British government is going back to the era of colonialism. Let me bring Sonia in here. Sonia, this doesn't reflect well on the British government. You've got David Miliband saying that he's going to look at changing the law. The appearance is very much one of the British government trying to appease Israel. Do you think there's all these talks going on behind closed doors about how close ties are with a particular country and what the government is prepared to do to protect them?
I mean, I think that's definitely a possibility, but we mustn't lose sight of the fact that this is not a problem that is confined to UK-Israeli relations. We're seeing the same thing in many other jurisdictions across Europe, where previously expansive provisions permitting universal jurisdiction-based prosecutions are being whittled down as a result of all kinds of pressure being placed on those states, and I'm talking here about states including Belgium and Spain, by other very powerful states including China, Israel, the United States, who feel very, very threatened by these provisions. And so we should be very, very careful to understand that what is happening more broadly on the international plane right now is a concerted effort to try and force European states in particular to roll back on their universal jurisdiction laws.
At the expense of human rights, do you think?
At the expense of accountability. I mean, universal jurisdiction is just one means that has been developed to try and hold accountable those who are responsible for the gravest international crimes. And so definitely there is a cost here, and I think that the human rights community will be expected to be very, very unhappy about what is the latest in this series of erosions of this principle.
So, to be perfectly realistic, we're never going to see this concept wielded against, for example, former Western leaders like George Bush, if people are upset over what happened in Iraq?
It's not impossible, but the politics of the situation mean it will be very, very unlikely because of the diplomatic pressure, the commercial pressure, etc., that will be brought to bear on any state whose courts see fit to try and take a move of that sort.
Shimon, what do you think this means for relations between the UK and Israel? Because there was a lot of anger and embarrassment in Israel over this, wasn't there?
It means that we are in a time of embarrassment for both sides. We are very unhappy. The public opinion in Israel and the leadership is very concerned about the fact that a private person can initiate proceedings. All the differences between universal jurisdiction, trying in Nuremberg or trying Eichmann or trying the Manuk, there are public prosecutors with responsibility, with professionality, without political bias, have initiated the proceedings. What we have here is campaigners from the Palestinian NGOs hiring lawyers to ambush Israelis on totally political motivation. And therefore, and it is double standards. And therefore, I think the change in Spain and the change in Belgium is to say, don't leave it to private prosecution. Leave it in the hands of public prosecutors, and they should hold the accountability of leaders, not private prosecutors that are initiated, hired for political reasons. And therefore, it is better for the UK, as Spain has done and Belgium has done, to limit the initiation of public prosecution, including in such matters, to the public authorities and not to private organizations.
Saad, do you think the UK will make these changes in the law?
According to the public statements that were made by the officials, I hope so.
Saad?
I hope they will not. I hope they will not do that. But I have no faith in this Labour government, because they have lied when they invaded Iraq, they have lied on other occasions, and this time they have given up easily. Whereas before, when it came to, in other cases, to other governments, foreign governments putting pressure, they told them, and so, unfortunately, there were Arab countries who were putting pressure on the UK regarding some of their refugees who found themselves in Britain. The British maintained that this has nothing to do with us. It's up to the law and the judiciary. And the judiciary, I think that Britain, if it embarks on this course, it will really discredit its credibility as a democratic country, as a country where the judiciary is independent, as a country which is going back to the colonial past, deceitful acts and double duplicity acts, and no one will respect the UK in this sphere. And I hope that this government will not do that, and if it does, the Arabs, Muslims, and all fair-minded and civilized people will not really forget what they have done, and they will condemn it in the most civilized manner. And I'm sorry to say, this is a license and a prescription for the terrorists, for the what you call fundamentalists you are fighting, to be justified in their acts.
We're going to have to leave it there.
And shame on...
I'm sorry to say we've run out of time. Thank you very much indeed. It was a fascinating discussion. I wish we could continue it, but I'm afraid we can't. Thank you to all my guests, Shimon Shatrit, Saad Jabbar and Sonia Skeets. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. We do welcome your comments. Email us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. But for the moment, from me, Shuli Ghosh, till next time, bye-bye.